I invite you to embrace two basic practices that will open the doors to your own psychic power in a way that will make your life a lot better. I spent about 5 years learning to come to terms with my psychic awareness. And even after that, it was quite a bit of struggle learning how to live day to day with heightened psychic skills. Some of the mistakes I made were simply abnormal. Like, they don't make any sense to me now, but at the time I was doing my best to cope with the forces that were happening, that were pushing me around, that were grabbing my attention and dragging it away from the world that I knew to be normal. The first hints I had came in a way that was remarkable. It was like, oh, okay, this is special. What is this? And I did my best to zero in on it, but it was the processing, the making sense of it that didn't work well for me. At the time, I smoked a fair amount of pot, and I was gradually, learning to understand myself. Like, I'm the one that still believes what we were talking about the next day. And as I believed the things that I was learning more and more, they carried over. I was like, oh, this isn't about being high. This is just helping me focus and ignore everything else. And that's a crucial element of this that I introduced to you, that you need to be able to keep your focus in order to unlock the extraordinary potential. And in order to do that, you really have to believe. And if you look at the last video about psychic belief, I think, you'll be able to answer the question, are you psychic? With of course you are. We all are. Now, as you believe, then you have to focus, and it'll give you the empowerment to recognize your focus makes a world of difference. But just focusing isn't enough. And that's what I discovered over these years. I was getting these hints and I was trying to focus, but I didn't know how to stay with it. And it took me quite a while to come to two basic points of trust. If you follow these practices, I promise you, it'll put you in a much better position to be psychic. But you really have to follow them through. Meaning, you have to stick with this even when it's difficult. Because one of the extraordinary gifts of being psychic is just to heal yourself. You can't stay with psychic awareness unless you come to terms with the wounds that you carry, because your own wounds become projections that get in the way of understanding what's happening in reality. So this is the first principle that I encourage you to embrace. You have to heal. You have to be committed to healing yourself. And as you commit to healing yourself, you're going to encounter people in the world who you will get extraordinary insight about. You'll meet people and you'll know things about them that you just shouldn't know. But that won't happen on a consistent basis unless you're able to tell the difference between your own problems and theirs. If you consistently avoid your own problems, you will not be able to see other people clearly, because you're going to be projecting, and that projection will gum up the works and you won't be able to embrace anything in a way that makes sense. So you'll just get stuck and you won't progress very far, and that'll be the end of the road for you. The second part of this is really kind of basic. It's so basic that you're probably going to go, yeah, I should do that. But I'm telling you, this is the foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. In fact, my parents bought a house that I loved. We bought it in the end of the 80s. I was a teenager. We enjoyed it so much. It was extraordinary. And just a couple years ago, they realized there was a problem. There was mold in one corner of the garage. And we opened up the wall and we found out the beams of the house they were over the edge of the foundation. So the beams were set into dirt along this side of the wall. Wood in dirt makes rot. But they had mismeasured the foundation and they hadn't bothered to correct it properly. This is what happens to you if you try to build a spiritual awareness. And I want to emphasize spiritual on top of this psychic, because the psychic is the way the mainstream knows this. But psychic awareness has to be grounded in spirituality. If you don't rest your spiritual awareness in health, in a solid foundation, it's going to rot. And anything you build on top of it, even if you make progress, it won't work well. You'll topple over. You're in danger of having walls that crumble around you. You have to have a basic spiritual foundation, and that spiritual foundation can come in many forms, but it needs to be consistent. When you get scared, who do you pray to? Who and what do you pray to when you're afraid? Because if you don't have a home base in your heart, then you're going to be all over the place. Psychic awareness, by its very nature, gives you windows into all sorts of phenomena that are all around us anyway. There are so many more stimuli in the world than we can filter. We cannot be aware of everything all at once, or it'll drive you crazy. You'll be bouncing between this and that thought and an insight. You bump into the repressed energy of everyone around you. Because when people repress things in themselves, as way too many people do, they're still right here. Psychic awareness sees them like they're on the outside of your clothes because they're in your aura, sometimes around your body. And if you have a half hold on your psychic insight, this can be terrifying and very confusing. So you have to plan for this. You have to expect it to be confusing as you learn to encounter life through the expanded awareness of a psychically awakened third eye and heart. You have to get your psychic awareness from your third eye down into your heart. And you cannot rest and stay in your heart unless you have a pattern of belief. Who do you trust when you're afraid? This can be as simple as God. It's okay to be centered in monotheism. Most of the monotheistic traditions were, subsumed with angels. There are lots of different angels in many different traditions who are in service to God. And the fact of the matter is, they're real. They're all real. But you can't bounce around between all of them indiscriminately, or you will never be able to find coherence. When you're afraid, who do you pray to? Because ultimately you have to go deep enough so that you learn to connect to an angelic, divine being. A being, someone who will end up talking to you through the chaos and help put you in a center. And you have to plan for this. What you do is you cultivate a connection to them before you know how to trust it. You cultivate it. This is what spiritual practice throughout millennia of human existence has been. You pray to the same person. And don't tell me you don't know how. Pray, help me, help me, help me. Whoever. Great. Take it to the next level. Find and empower yourself with the influence of spiritual traditions that have been around for thousands of years, and learn enough of their techniques to inform your practice. The consciousness that brings together your mind with your body and opens you to the presence of spirit unlocks the most amazing psychic gifts that are possible. And this is where I'd like to leave you. You have the potential to take this much deeper and to inform your life, to improve your life dramatically by making use of the psychic awareness that at first is exciting and a burden. So as you confront the chaos that might make you feel a little bit crazy, I invite you to commit to doing the work to heal yourself and to take it to the next level, because the only way out is through. And when you reach the other side of the challenges that you're in, you're going to be someone who's much more aware of the world around you. In fact, it might be uncomfortable to you to learn to navigate and come to terms with the people around you and how much you can learn about them. And in the next video, I'd like to talk to you about the spiritual and moral etiquette that are necessary to maintain in order to keep your spiritual growth improving and to be at peace, that you're using your power and insight in a way that's healthy, loving, and good for the world.